Behold Pegasus, the mighty winged horse of ancient Greek mythology, rendered as this beautiful and whimsical automata. Crank the handle, and Pegasus starts to gallop. His tail starts to wag, and his wings start to flap as he soars up and down, appearing to fly through the air. If you have a 3D printer or know someone who does, you can build this enchanting mechanism. All you need is CA glue, a couple of paper clips, and a lighter. If you belong to KiwiCo or Crunch Labs and you're bored waiting for that next package to come, this project is perfect for you. Loaded with gears, cams, and a 4-bar linkage, this automata is a mechanically inclined person's dream come true. The STL files have been posted on Thingiverse and Printables. Just watch this video and I'll show you how to put it together. It's a lot of fun and it's not difficult. Before you start constructing your Pegasus automata, I think it's good to go over the shafts that are used on this model. There's a lot of shafts, so I just want to make it clear to you. Shafts 1 through 5 are indicated with these labels: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Shafts 2 through 5 are all half-inch diameter shafts which have a D cross section, and I've had the files modified slightly so that when you print up these shafts, there'll be bars on the flat part of the D side indicating which shaft it is. So this one has 4 bars, so this is shaft 4. This one has 5 bars running along the flat. This is shaft 5, etc. Shaft 1 is a 3/8 inch diameter shaft. So that's the only one that's 3/8 of these 5. The rest of these are not really shafts. These are little protrusions that come out of the plastic, and these two up here are shafts. These are for the Pegasus stand. These happen to be 3/8 of an inch diameter shafts. They're identical to each other, so it should be pretty obvious how this shafting goes, and this is just to make assembling the kit a little bit easier. Okay, let's start by assembling the frame. So 3D print out these 2 frames, right and left pieces. These are the frame spacers, so print those out as well. And then we'll soon be using the base. So print out the base and the base top plate. And we'll put these aside for now. I have medium CA cement. I think this project might go better with thin CA because these pieces fit pretty tightly. But anyway, I also have my accelerant. So we're going to start by assembling these. These bosses go on the outside, and the tabs on all of these spacers, there's a part that has a tab on it. They always face down. These other 2 spacers just go across. It'll be pretty obvious. Always do a dry fit, so I'm going to fit them together dry without glue, and then we'll continue. Okay, these pieces fit in really, really nicely. I fitted it into 1/2. I haven't glued it yet. I just want to point out it's pretty obvious, but the shorter spacer goes on the shorter side, okay? And remember, the tab's facing down. At this point, I'm going to glue it together. I'm just going to put a small amount of CA on these tabs here, or on this part here. I'm actually not putting it on the tabs. And I'm just going to put this in. I'm going to make sure you get it all the way seated, and then I can give it a quick spray with accelerant. There we go. All right, and I'm just going to do that with all the other spacers. This is the shorter one. I'm just going to put a really small amount of glue in a couple of places. It goes on the shorter side like this, just remember that. Just make sure when you put those in, you really seat them down. And then you can give it a little accelerant. I just did a dry fit of this piece on top and it looked great. I'm just gonna put CA cement in a few key places and then put them together. Just want to point out there's a slot in this piece. You shouldn't have it in yours. That was a mistake, so just excuse the fact that there's a slot there. When you're gluing this together, it's good to sometimes stick your fingers between this area and squeeze it together, so you can, squeeze it from here as well, but really make sure everything is really good. Okay. The next piece you're going to want to take is the base top piece. And when gluing this down, it's very important that it gets glued in this orientation. So basically you want the shorter side of this frame, this, when I say short, I mean this height here, to be where there's a little more space in the front, between the front edge and this slot. Okay, you see how little space there is in the back. So you want the tall side in the back here and this in the front. Now do a dry fit first. This fits really well, and then you can CA glue it together. So I've glued the frame down to this top plate, and I've also printed out my base. Now, it's nice to give this base some weight, so I was just down, there's a beach volleyball court in my neighborhood, and I was at first feeling possibly guilty about filling up this dish with sand, but there was so much sand outside of the court on the grass next to it that I didn't even have to take anything from the court. But anyway, if you don't have to do this step, but I'm going to fill it with sand. Now you can fill it with anything that has some weight that's inexpensive. So like you could fill it with salt. I've done something like that in the past because salt can be bought sometimes at a supermarket for very little money. If you have an aquarium and you have some gravel left over from your aquarium, that will work. Or I've even contemplated filling it with plaster of Paris and just letting it get hard. So however you want to do it, but I'm going to fill this up with sand, and then I'm going to glue the face plate or the top plate onto it and seal it up. I have this long ruler that I'll try to use to kind of level off the sand that I put here. There are those tabs, so just be aware of that. And I'm just going to clean that up before I glue it on. Okay, I filled this with sand. I'm now just going to put CA glue in a few of the key places and then glue the top on. So when you've completed that step, hopefully yours came out as pretty good as mine. I squeezed this together while I squirted a little accelerant in it because it was wanting to kind of separate a little bit. But anyway, this is really good. It has a bit of weight to it now that there's sand in it, and we'll take it the next step from there. The next assembly we're going to make is what I call the ladder. So you're going to have printed up these two ladder sides and the ladder spacers. It goes together just like the frame did. Just remember these bosses all go on the outside, so these flat pieces are on the inside with the spacers in between. Again, do a dry fit before you actually glue it. I've just made a dry fit. Just again, before you glue this together, make sure it fits properly and make sure these bosses are on the outside. Just putting glue on either end of the either side of those tabs, just a teeny drop, and then putting it in place here. Again, make sure it goes like that, and then we can give it a little hit with the accelerant. The next thing we're going to assemble is what I call the 4-bar link. These are the pieces required. Again, there are bosses. Be careful, there are some bosses on the outside of this. So once again, make sure these bosses go on the outside, and the flat side, the side that's totally flat, is going to be the inside, and we'll just glue these spacers on. Again, do a dry fit first and then glue it together. When it's finished, it should look like this. The next piece we're going to put together is what's called the Pegasus stand. Again, it goes together the same way the last couple of pieces we put together went. Just remember, again, these bosses go on the outside with the Pegasus stand spacers in between. When you're finished assembling the Pegasus stand, it should look like this. Okay, the next thing we're going to assemble is we're going to put these gears onto the ladder. You want to get the 4 12-tooth gears that have just a regular circular bore running through them, as opposed to a D section. And then you're going to want these 4 smaller caps, these end caps. These are the ones that are for a 3/8 inch diameter shaft, which is protruding from the ladder here. Don't confuse it with these bigger caps. They're used later in the project on the 1/2 inch shaft. So I'm just trying to show you the difference. Obviously the size is pretty obvious. You're going to put these gears right here, make sure they all mesh with each other. So you can just Get them all in there. And then we're just going to glue these caps in position. Now, before we do it, I just want to point out, if you push down on this cap, if everything was 3D printed correctly, even when I push down on the cap, the gear should be free to rotate. So make sure that's the case. If when you push down on the cap bottoms out and actually touches the gear, then when you glue the cap in, give a little space between the cap and the gear, which you can do by just sliding an index card in between. But if it's printed correctly, should be no problem. We're just going to glue these caps on. I'm just going to put a little glue on the top of this shaft and put it on and call it a day. One way you can do this is you just put a small amount of CA cement on the top of that shaft, and if you want, you can squirt a little accelerant into the cap, and then you just put it right on. Just push down on it until the glue dries. When it's complete, everything should rotate very freely, and we can go on to the next step. We're going to place our attention now on these two 12-tooth gears that have, I think these are called the Pegasus stand gears. They have very small holes. They're very hard to see, approximately here and approximately there. You'll notice that one of the holes is right in between two teeth, and the other hole is aligned with a tooth. So that's important. Now what I want to do now is I want to take a paper clip, I want to unbend it, I want to heat it up with a lighter, and I want to plunge it through that hole and keep it as perpendicular as I can. Now I happen to notice that these paper clips have a plastic outer coating on them that I'm going to just scrape off with an X-Acto knife. Then I'm going to heat it with a lighter and put it through that hole. First, I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and just remove this plastic coating. I've never seen paper clips before that have a plastic coating. I guess that's a higher end paper clip. Okay, you can see that this plastic coating came off. Okay, I don't know if you could see that. All right, I'm now going to heat it up and plunge it into that hole. I'm going to try to get this to go in as straight as it possibly can. It's really hard to see that hole. Working over a piece of foam so that it's soft enough so I can bring this all the way through if it does come through. It doesn't have to go all the way through. Okay, and once that solidifies, you can pull it out, and it should look like that. I'm gonna get this nice and hot. I'm trying to keep it perpendicular. That came out pretty good. And again, the second it solidifies, just takes a few seconds. You can twist it a little and then just pull it out. I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but this one came out pretty darn good. This one's a little bit off. You can see it's a little off center, but you know, I don't think it's going to really matter. So there are these 4 little pins we have to make that will go into these holes later. We'll deal with that later. But for now, we're going to work on what's called the Pegasus stand, and we will do a few things next. These are the two what are called the Pegasus stand shafts. Okay, these are 2 identical shafts. They have what's called a D cross section. When these come off the 3D printer, I give them a little sand. I have an emery stick here. I made it myself, but you can just go to a store and buy like an emery pad at a 99-cent store or something, or if you have some sandpaper. I think they come off the 3D printer good enough. I don't really think they need sanding, but you know, the 3D printer has a little problem making this arc. I print it with the flat side down on the bed because otherwise, you know, it really doesn't do a good job. So Yeah, so just you might want to give it a quick little sand. But what we're going to do right now is just make sure, this is important, that these shafts fit through these gears. So we're just going to basically, I'm just going to glue this shaft onto the gear. It's important that the shaft does not stick out above the face of this gear. So I'm going to put it down on the table and just put a little glue in there, and I'm going to do that for both shafts. For this next step, we're going to take one of these gears and put it into this part of the Pegasus stand. But I want to point out, this is important, I put a little white paint where the hole is on these gears, just so that the camera could pick it up a little bit better. But when these two gears go into position, it is really important that these two holes line up. So as I mentioned, this hole is in line with a tooth, and this hole here, or I should say this hole here, is in line with the space in between two teeth. So when you put these two gears together like this, we want those two holes to line up. Now the first gear that we put in doesn't really matter. I can put in either gear I want, and I'm going to use this little collar in the back here, and I'm just going to glue it in position so the shaft is in the Pegasus stand. Now I really want to make sure I don't glue this shaft onto the Pegasus stand. This has to be free to rotate, so I'm just going to put a little drop of glue on the outside, and then I'll use a little of the accelerant. I want to make sure no glue seeps inside. Okay, we're now going to insert the Pegasus stand into the ladder and line up the holes. Now we're going to put this gear in place through these two pieces. The alignment has to be perfect to get these two to go through. Let me just put it where I can see it better. Okay, this is looking perfect. Now, this is a critical part. The hole on this gear has to line up with the hole on that gear. So you just have to make sure you put it in the right tooth. Okay, so it's like this. If you draw a line from the center of this gear to the center of this gear, along that line, those two holes should line up. And now in the back, we're just going to glue on another one of these collars. And again, we want to follow the same rules we did before and not glue it to the we want to make sure this shaft does not get glued in place and it's free to rotate. So be careful gluing that collar on. Okay, with the assembly complete, you should be able to rotate this gear, and they should all rotate. And again, at some point, those two holes and those two gears should line up with each other. All right. The next step we're going to do is we're going to take what I've designated as shaft 1, and we're just going to glue an end cap onto the end of it for now. This shaft is eventually going to go into the frame at this uppermost position. Okay, this uppermost position, that shaft is going to go in there, and it's going to connect the ladder to the frame. But let's start off by just gluing on this end cap. Okay, with the little cap glued onto the shaft, I'm now going to insert one of the 12-tooth gears that has the D bore in the middle, and that's just going to slide in like that. Then we're going to fit the ladder onto the top of the frame. The ladder fits on the outside. We're going to send this shaft with the gear through the entire model. Make sure the gears mesh. And once you push that shaft all the way through, we will glue the little collar onto the back side of it. Okay, so here's the assembly, and we'll just glue this right onto here. Again, make absolutely certain you don't glue that shaft into position. Once you've glued those on, you should be able to rotate the whole mechanism. It should be pretty free to rotate. All right, looking good. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to focus our attention right here. You can hear my 3D printer in the background is getting ready to print more parts. So here I have what's called shaft 4. Okay, shaft 4 goes into this position here, and you also need to gather these parts here. You're going to need a 12-tooth gear that has the D section, the 1/2 inch diameter D section in the middle, you're going to need a 24 tooth gear that has the 1/2 inch D section in the middle. We're going to need an end cap. This is the larger end cap, the 1/2 inch end cap, and you're going to need shaft number 4. So let's just see real quick, just for reference. Shaft number 4 measures about 2.75, 2 3/4 inches, and we're going to start off by just gluing the end cap onto the end of the shaft. Okay, we're going to now take the shaft number 4 that has the end cap already glued onto it. We're going to take one of the 12 tooth gears that has the 1/2 inch D bore in it. Here is a 24 tooth gear that also has the 1/2 inch D bore in it, and we're going to have one of these collars to glue the shaft in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide the shaft through the 12 tooth gear. Now we're going to put it in the frame right in this position right here. We're going to flip the frame around, and we're going to put the 24 tooth gear I like the texture that the print bed leaves, so I'm going to leave that textured finish on the outside. And now I'm just going to use CA cement and just glue that little locking collar in place. Once you have that shaft glued in, just spin it around to make sure everything is free and it looks really good. For the next step, we're going to need quite a number of parts. We're going to need shaft 2. Shaft 2 is about 3 inches long, and again, it's a 1/2 inch diameter shaft with a D cross section. We're going to need one of these button caps, the bigger ones, the 1/2 inch ones. We're going to need what we call the 4-bar linkage. We're going to need an 18 tooth gear. We're going to need a 24 tooth gear, and then we also need the 12 tooth gear that has the boss sticking out of it. So if you look over here, just make sure it's the gear that has this boss sticking out. We're going to need all of these parts. The first thing we're going to do, we've done this before, is we're just going to glue the end cap onto the shaft. Okay, I've glued the cap onto the end of the shaft, and now I am going to take the 18 tooth gear, and I'm going to slide the shaft into it like this. I'm going to bring over the frame, and I'm going to put the shaft with the 18 tooth gear. I'm going to start to slide it into the housing over here, but now I have to take the ladder. Now, or I should say the 4-bar linkage. Now this is the 4-bar linkage. You'll notice in the front end there are 2 holes relatively close together, and in the back side there is the 1/2 inch hole. That's what's going to slide into here. So I'm going to slide this in, and then I'm going to put this shaft through everything. Okay. Now this 18 tooth gear meshes with this 12 tooth gear here, so make sure that meshes. And now I'm going to swing the entire unit around, and this is where we're going to put the 12 tooth gear that has the boss sticking out of it. We're going to put the flat side of it against here, so this is going to go like this. Again, these are D sections. You have to line up the flat of the D. This gear meshes with this 24 tooth gear. Okay. And now we're going to put this other 24 tooth gear here. And then we're going to put it all together by gluing another locking collar right over there. So I have another locking collar here. I'm going to glue it right into this position, and then this will finish this entire shaft's assembly. Here's what it looks like with the little collar glued on, and this is basically what it looks like from the back side. Now keep in mind we've got the 4-bar linkage here, which will eventually now get connected to the bottom of the Pegasus stand. So this will eventually go like that. Okay, and maybe that's what we'll do next. All right, your Pegasus Automata should now be in this state. What we're going to do next is we're going to put in this rod, which it goes onto the 4-bar linkage piece, which is this piece right here. It's going to go right in here. So to make this a little bit easier, I'm just going to rotate this to about here. I'm going to lift this part of the mechanism all the way up, and it'll be a little bit easier. Just get this into the camera. It'll be a little bit easier to work on this. Now there are 2 holes at the end. We're going into the one that's second from the end, and basically I want to glue this piece in so that it's centered. So I'm just going to use my ruler to measure it until I'm pretty good. This looks pretty centered to me. I have about 1.4 on that side and 1.4 on this side, and I'm just going to glue this in position right there. Okay, so I just glued the rod, which I think it's called something like the 4-bar link rod. That's in position centered. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the 4-bar linkage onto the, let's turn it around like this. These two are now going to come together. So this is the connecting rod to connect the 4-bar linkage to the Pegasus stand. So this may be called something like Pegasus stand 4-bar linkage rod. Now once this rod is in place, I don't know how obvious it is, but this now forms a 4-bar linkage, what's called a 4-bar linkage, where the ladder from this point to this point, that's one link. From this point to this point is another link, and then you've got this link and this link. So it's a 4-bar linkage, and what that does is, as this moves up and down, the Pegasus stand, this little vertical piece, always remains vertical as this goes up and down. So now once you stick this rod in, all you're going to do is we're going to take these little collars and we're just going to glue them on to the end. In fact, you can glue, might be the best thing to do is to glue one of the collars onto one end first, then slide it in, and then glue the other collar on. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, I glued one of the collars onto the shaft, so now I'm going to slide it through. And now all I have to do is glue the other collar onto this side. The next step, we're going to need these pieces. We're going to need shaft number 3. We're going to need the handle and the thumb grip here, a 1/2-inch cap here. This is what's called the handle link, and then this is an 8-tooth gear with a 1/2-inch D bore in it. And we're going to start by gluing the 1/2-inch end cap on to the end of shaft 3. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the handle and slide the outer tube over it, and then we're going to glue it like this. Now this is important. It's going to go like this. Make sure the boss on this piece is sticking out this way, and you glue the handle into this part of it. Now we also want to make sure that this inner or this outer sleeve can rotate, so you don't want to glue the sleeve to the handle. So I'm just going to put a little CA in here and glue it like that. Okay, I glued the handle onto the handle link, and the outer sleeve is free to rotate, so that'll make a nice action for the handle. The next thing we're going to do is we'll move the model into position. We're going to push shaft number 3 through this hole till the end cap comes to this side, and we'll just turn the model around. We're going to put the 8-tooth gear, and it does mesh with this big 24-tooth gear, and then we're just going to glue the handle on like that, and that should complete that assembly. Once you've glued the handle on, you can lift the mechanism up by holding this rod, and now when you rotate the handle, you should see most of the gears rotating, and it should be pretty free. Mine is very nice. The action is very nice. And if you have this kind of free motion, we can finish the assembly. The next part of the assembly is going to involve mounting these big gears and the wheel onto either side of the mechanism. And the way it works is this is shaft number 5, and it's very simple. It's going to go like this. Shaft number 5 is going to go in here. The gear, now keep in mind there is this stud sticking out that has to go on the outside. So we're going to, I'll just do a dry fit for now to make sure everything fits correctly. Now you may have to lift up the 4-bar mechanism just to fit these gears in. Let's just make sure everything looks to be good. And again, the that tab or that little shaft needs to be sticking out on the outside. Let me just lift this up, make sure everything is fitting, looks good. When these are put together correctly, these two small little shafts that stick out the gear and the wheel should be lined up with each other. And now all you really have to do is glue them in. I think the easiest thing to do is I'm going to first glue the shaft onto this gear, and then I'll slide it through and glue the wheel on the other side. It is important that when you glue these shafts onto the gear that you don't let the shaft come out beyond the wheel. Make sure that the shaft is more or less flush with the wheel, because there is going to be a link that goes onto this stud and it's going to go around, and it would interfere with this if it's sticking out. So I'm just going to put it against the table while I'm gluing the shaft in. As you can see, this is how I'm going to glue it. I'm going to just put it on my table, glue it like that. Then I'll be guaranteed that this is flush with the surface of the gear. Just want to point out that I'm allowing the little shaft that sticks out to overhang my table, and I just glued this shaft in. I'm just using my ruler to try to make sure this shaft is as perpendicular as I can get it. Depending on your 3D printing quality, if you have a really tight fit, you might not have to worry about it, because it might just be so squared up it's perfect. But this looks pretty good. I'm just going to hit it with some accelerant, then I'll put the other part together. So here's the wheel glued onto the other side, and just keep in mind that if you did this right, these two protrusions, these two little shafts that are coming out of the wheel on this side and the gear on that side, they should be lined up with each other. Okay, to complete this lower section of the Pegasus model, we're going to need the 2 wheel links. Notice that one hole is 1/4 of an inch. That will go into this rod here. The other hole is 3/16 of an inch, and that will go into the studs that are sticking out of the gear and the wheel. We have 2 collars for the 3/16 studs, one on each side, and then we have 4 of these other collars or washers, whatever you want to call them. They'll fit onto the 1/4 inch shaft. So we're going to start by first just fitting these on. Again, the 3/16 of an inch hole is going to go in here, and the 1/4 inch hole will go in here. So these will go just like that. Okay, now before we do, well, we can do it like that, and before we glue anything in position, I just want to get some places lined up properly. Before I put these links on, I'm going to slide one of the washers or collars on both sides. I'm going to slide these on. Now I'm going to put the link on. Again, the 1/4 inch hole is going to go up here. The 3/16 hole is going to go down here. Okay, I'm going to do this on both sides. I'm going to grab a very small piece of masking tape, and holding the model, try to get this in the camera as best I can. Let's just see. Holding the model straight on, what you're going to want to do is make sure that this link is parallel. So what I'm doing is, it's kind of hard for me. This is a better angle for the camera, actually. Let me see if I can do this. I'm looking to see that this link is parallel to the wheel or the gear, which, depending on which side you're working on, and you can move this collar a little in or out to make sure that the link is nice and straight. Now this isn't super critical, but once you're pretty happy with how straight it is, I'm just going to put a piece of tape right here on the shaft, just so when I glue the collar in place, I'll know where to put it. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm going to do that on the other side. And then when I have this position nicely located, I'll glue first the collar in place, and then we'll get the link in there. Once I have that little piece of tape there to mark the location of the washer, I'll now put a drop of CA cement and then just slide the washer into position, and that'll do it. Another thing that's worth noting is the proper location for these washers should be, when I bring this down and like rest it over the gear, this part of I'll use this pin, the inside face of this washer here, I don't know how easy it is to see, should line up with the outside face of the gear. Same thing on the wheel side. The inside part of this washer here should line up with the outside face of that gear. I put the links on. Now the only thing I have to do is put these end caps on down here and another one of these up here. Now just remember, we do not want to glue that link to anything. It has to be free to rotate, so let's go very easy on the glue. I'm just going to apply glue to the outside. Okay, once you've glued the links on, which I call the wheel links, the entire lower section of the model is finished. And now when you crank the handle, hopefully if everything is working properly, you will get the motion that we've been desiring. You'll notice that the Pegasus stands, that little stick stays vertical because of the 4-bar linkage. And you can see all the action of all these various gears at play. Now the only thing we have to do next is to finish the Pegasus figure and mount it on top. And then when we rotate the crank, the Pegasus will appear to be flying through the air. Okay, we have to make these little pins to complete this project. So I've printed out these little, I think they're called the pinhead. They're very small little 3D printed pieces. I used a brim because I was having trouble with these adhering to the build plate. I've bent a paper clip a little bit, and I've removed the plastic covering from this clip. Had some plastic covering on it. My plan now is to heat the tip of this with a lighter, and then I'm going to push it right into the center of that head, and I'm going to try to make the paper clip as perpendicular as possible. It's not super critical, but I'm going to try my best to make it perpendicular. So here I'm going to heat it up. Trying to make it as perpendicular as possible. I'm just going to let it solidify in there. And that came out pretty good. I like it. I'm going to cut it with some clippers. I'm just going to cut it. I'll probably have to recut this to a shorter length, but all you have to do now is just remove the brim, and if you want, you can spray paint it. Now I'm spray painting my pin and link a brass color because that's how it was in the original wooden kit. That'll be up to you to decide if you want to do that. So here are my 4 completed pins, painted kind of a gold, kind of a brassy color, and we'll use them later. We may have to cut them down to the right length. We'll see what needs to be done. Okay, before we assemble the Pegasus figure, I want to again use the technique we just used with the paper clip and put holes in the front and rear leg of the figure. Now it's hard to see, but when you 3D print these legs, there will be a small little mark where those holes should be. So we're going to use the same technique of just heating up this paper clip and driving it through the leg. I again try to keep it as perpendicular as possible, but we'll just heat up this paper clip And I'm going to put it right in that hole right there. Try to keep it perpendicular. That looks good. And I'm just going to play the same game with the other one. These are the pieces you're going to need to assemble the Pegasus figure. Now, Pegasus, of course, is a white-winged horse, so I've printed it out in white. You have the two profiles, you have the two sets of wings, you have these wing retention clips, you have the four legs. The two legs that have the little holes in them are going to be in the sort of front part of the figure. This is the front leg and the rear leg, and these other two legs, which do not have the holes in them, will be on the back side of the figure. You have the cam here, and then over here is a little spacer. I've put a piece of black, I just cut off a piece of 3D print material, PLA, and I'm just going to kind of glue it into this spacer. I've never tried this before, but I'm going to try to heat stake this after we assemble it. So the color of this filament will be the same color as the eye for the Pegasus. So I'm using black filament, so my Pegasus figure is going to have black eyes. If you want your Pegasus figure to have a different color eye, use a different color filament here. I'm just going to glue some of this filament in and then cut it so that a certain amount is sticking out on each end, and then we'll just start assembling this. I'm going to start by grabbing the Pegasus profile that has the extension coming out the bottom, and here is one of the wings. I'm also going to grab that. I kind of like the texture that's left by the building board, so I'm going to use this wing because it has the texture on this side. So the idea is I'm going to slip the wing in behind the figure, and then the retention clip goes over here. It just slides over this little tab that's sticking out of the wing. Now, if you slide the retention clip all the way up against the figure, as I've done here, you'll notice that the wing can't really flap. So you do need a little bit of a gap between the retention clip and the profile, and that gap can be obtained by flushing it all the way up against the profile, and then give the wing a upper movement and a downward movement, and whatever gap has been left is a good gap, and at that point you can just put some CA cement and glue the retention clip in place. So I don't know how easy it is for the camera to pick up the gap, but it's about, maybe the gap is like similar to an index card, and just so that you glue the clip in so that this wing can move up and down. Now we're going to play the exact same game on this profile. We will slide this wing in from the front side like this, and we will put its retention clip back here. And again, I like to slide the clip all the way up against the profile and then just wiggle the wing a little bit up and down, and whatever gap ends up being created, that's where I'm going to glue the clip. When you finish gluing the two wing retention clips in, the two profiles should look like this now. So just make sure it's looking like that. Now we're going to turn our attention to the shafts that mount the legs and the tail and the little cam gets mounted to. These two shafts are identical. One will be for the front and one will be for the rear of the figure. I'm going to take this cam, pick up one of these shafts, and I'm going to slide this cam into the center position of the shaft, and you can put a drop of CA glue to hold it there. And on the other shaft, I'm going to slide the tail into position, and also I'm going to center that, and you can glue those in place as well. Now this little spacer that I pushed a piece of PLA 3D printing material through, I cut it very short. It's sticking out about maybe between a 1/16 and an 1/8 of an inch, probably about 3/32 of an inch sticking out on each side. I've never done this before. We'll see how it works. To assemble the Pegasus figure, we're just going to slide the, we're going to slide this front shaft that has the cam into this position. We're going to slide the other shaft that has the tail into this position. You can kind of see how these wings are going to flap. This cam is going to move up and down and cause the wings to flap. And I'm going to take the other, we have to also put the spacer in. So the spacer goes right there into the eye socket. And now we're going to put the two figures go together like this. Let me just see if I can get that spacer to line up. Okay? So this is basically how it should look when you put them together. We'll now put the legs on and we'll try to finish this. I'm going to grab the rear leg that has the little hole in it and line it up to the D section, and it should go in pretty easily. And I'm going to do the same thing with the front leg that has the little hole in it. So this one has the little hole in it, and that's going to go here. And we'll just flip the figure around and we'll do the same thing with the other legs. So here's the front leg. Now the legs are slightly, off from each other, so it looks more natural that Pegasus is kind of galloping. So that's basically how it looks. So when these back legs move, the tail will go with it, and when this front leg moves, that leg fell off, but that's okay. When the front leg moves up and down, it will cause the wings to appear to be flapping. All right, so this is what just fell off. It's just this leg in the back. So once this is all assembled, we'll glue it together and we'll take it from there. Okay, I've never tried this technique before, but I'm willing to give it a shot. In the industry, this would be called heat staking. What I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up the tip of my screwdriver with my lighter, and then I'm going to try to kind of mush this part of the little plastic that's sticking out for his eyeball. That will kind of create a rivet and prevent the figure from coming apart, and maybe also make his eye a little bit bigger. So let me see if this is going to work. If this doesn't work, I may have to make the whole figure over again. Just trying to heat up the tip of that screwdriver. And I'm just going to try to flatten it out a little bit. I think it worked a little bit. I'll go over to the other side. I think that definitely flattened it a little bit, so it will make it a little bit like a heat stake. Again, let me just heat this up again. It's kind of sticking. I have to say, it is kind of sticking, but that's okay. That doesn't look half bad. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and trim it a little bit. This side I think could get a little more, so I'm going to just see if I can heat that up a little bit more. There, that looks pretty good. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna just trim it a little with my X-Acto knife, but this is basically the completion of the Pegasus figure. Looks really good. Okay, here are the two links that I just printed out. We're going to use the same technique we have been using. I'm going to heat up this paper clip with the lighter, and then I'm going to push it through these holes on the end. And I want the paper clip to go all the way through and create a through hole. I'm going to put these on top of a piece of foam so that the paper clip will be able to go through and penetrate the foam. So I'm just going to heat this up. Again, I'm going to try to make the paper clip go in as straight as possible, as perpendicular as I can. Let's just see if I can make this work. Okay, I went all the way through. It's pretty perpendicular, and I also want this to be nice and free to rotate. Okay, that looks great. And I'm just going to do that with the other three remaining holes. Okay, I have the holes in both sides of these links. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray paint these like a brass color. And I think that's because the original wooden automata, the links were actually made out of brass. I'm going to just try to give it that look of brass. See how that looks. Here are the two links that were 3D printed and then painted a brass or gold color with some spray paint. Here's my Pegasus figure. Now, one of the sort of signature features of this automata are the fact that these two links go diagonally, which really is kind of unique. So I just want to make sure we put them down correctly. Now, if you'll notice, if you flip them over, they're two links. They both have bosses sticking out of them. The higher boss is going to go on the gear side, and the shorter boss is going to go on the Pegasus side. And you'll notice that one side has higher bosses than the other, and that's so that one link can fit under the other. So what you want to do is you want to make sure the higher bosses are on the link that's going to go on top, like this, and then the shorter bosses of the two are going to go on the Pegasus. So I hope that doesn't sound too confusing, but you've got the shorter, taller. These are going to go on the gear side. These are going to go on Pegasus like this. All right, so I'm going to use those pins we created, and we'll see if we can make that happen. I'll work with this link first, the one that goes underneath, and I just want to make sure I cut my pin. So here's one of my pins. I want to make sure I cut the pin to a good length. So I'm going to put it through this hole. I also want to make sure that these links are free. This hole's a little on the tight side. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to run my paper clip through that hole again, heating it up with the lighter and just opening up that hole a little. I really want these links to be free. Okay, so this is the link that has the two, let's say, shorter bosses on them compared to this one. You can see those bosses are much taller. So again, I want to take the side that has the shorter. This boss is a little shorter than this one, so I'm going to put this side into the Pegasus figure. I'm going to run this pin through, and then I'm going to cut it down to size. The legs of the Pegasus are only about 3/32 thick, so I'm going to just cut this down. I don't want this necessarily sticking out, so I'm going to cut it down to about that length. And then I'm going to just put it in here. I'm going to put this one in its front leg. Okay. Now I'm going to put something underneath this like a piece of foam so I can drive that pin down. Okay, I've got the pin in there. I'm just going to put a drop of CA glue behind the leg. Going to give it a little accelerant. There we go. Make sure you don't glue it down. So I'm going to rotate it while the glue is curing. That should be good. I'm going to do the same thing on the other. So here's the other link. Again, it has two bosses sticking out. There's one that's taller than the other, and the taller side goes on the gear. This side goes on the Pegasus figure. Now remember, this is the one that's going to go over the top. So I'm going to play the same game. I'm going to stick this pin in. I'm going to put a drop of CA behind it so I hopefully don't avoid gluing the link to the leg, which would be really bad. That was a bit too much CA I just gave it. Little spritz with the accelerant, and again I'm wiggling the link to make sure I didn't glue it down. When you finish gluing in these pins, this is what it should look like, and now we can attempt to mount it onto the rest of the model. For the next step, it would really be convenient if you have one of these little binder clips. You could possibly use a paper clip or even a piece of tape, but I'm going to see if this works. Now I'm going to take the kit, or I should take the whole model, I should say. I'm going to lean it down like this. Now the Pegasus figure is going to come here in the back of the Pegasus stand. I'm going to try to clip it in position. We may have to make some fine adjustments to the height of the figure to get everything to work as good as it can work. But I'm just going to clip that in position temporarily. Now the idea is this link gets pinned into this gear where that hole is, and this link gets pinned into that gear, and we'll just see if those pins go in. You may have to cut down this pin a little bit so it's the right length. So I cut it down to about maybe 3/8 of an inch long. It's going to go in here, and then I'm going to put it in that little hole. Now it's super important I don't glue the link to the gear. So if I put some CA cement near that hole, I'm a little worried it's going to glue in. So I'm going to put some CA in, but then I'm going to take almost all of it away. I hope this works. This is a little tricky. I'm hoping that CA will flow into that little hole. It is a little hole. I'm going to try to use a pin to kind of push some of that CA in there. I'm now going to wipe it all off. And I will see if I can get this to go. There's so little light in here. I need a flashlight to see what I'm doing. Okay, I put that in. I hope there's enough CA to glue it in place. I'm going to play the same game on this side. Put a little CA over that hole. I'm using this pin to try to encourage the CA to go into the hole. I want to make sure some of it goes in that hole. Okay, now I'm going to wipe it all off because I just cannot glue this link on. Again, I need some light. Okay. We'll let that CA cure, and then we'll mess around with the height of the figure. Okay, the next thing that I want to do to adjust the Pegasus figure to get the maximum action, gently crank the mechanism. Now, what we want to do is I'm going to try to stop the mechanism at the point at which the maximum, like these 2 feet of the Pegasus figure are the greatest distance apart. At that position, that's when the cam is pushing down on the wings, and that's where the wings should be at their maximum height. So you can play around with it a little. You could see it's right in this range. So right when I get to about here, I'd like his wings to be as high up as possible. So to make the wings go up a little more, I believe I have to move the figure up a little. Let me just see if that's true. I'm loosening my clip. No, actually, I want to move the figure down. Oh, I've made enough of these figures now that I should know. So if I move the figure down, you can see the wings have gone up a lot. So now they look pretty good. Now the question is, how do they look in the other position? Oh, this looks great. His wings are flapping really well. So I really like this position. So this is basically where I want it to be. I'm going to try to keep it as straight as possible. Let me just go back to the maximum position right there where the wings are like up there. This looks so good. Like that. That looks good. Okay. When you're happy with the position, I think that looks really good now. The wings are really high. They can't really get any higher than that. This is where we want it to be. So you have a couple of options. I might be able to just put a piece of, a drop of CA glue right there, or I could mark it with a pencil and then put some glue behind it. So maybe that's what I'll do. I'll put a small pencil line across there so I know where it is, and then I'll glue the figure in place. At this point, your Pegasus automata is finished. However, I definitely think I'm going to paint the black piece coming up here white, just to make this thing look a little bit cooler. But if you've assembled everything correctly, as you rotate this handle, you'll see the wings of the Pegasus figure will flap. His tail will go up and down, and if you have some children, they really will delight in this beautiful automata. Just for the record, I want to point out, I was trying to give a little bit of pop to this. I attempted at one point to paint these caps gold, the same color as the links, and I thought that would look really good. It turned out it looked awful. I think it was just like too much gold, fake looking gold. It was like Donald Trump style. So I made it all black, but you could do so many different things. You could print these gears in different colors and the links in different colors and have fun with it and see what look you like the best for your Pegasus kit. So right now this model has the lower section in black, the crisscrossing links in brass, and the Pegasus figure in white. As always, I thank you for watching, and I hope that your Pegasus automata came out at least as good as mine, if not better. Thanks again.